Hey RV family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the new Desinsertion record entitled Our Biggest Mistake Was Letting Them Control Us. This is a Missouri project that I stumbled upon and wanted to put on your guys' radar because this is one of the most cool sounding death metal records that I've heard this entire year up until this point, sort of in the underground. So I feel like this is going to be a pretty straight to the point and clear-cut review. This is on the brutal side of the death metal spectrum, I would say. Fans of Deeds of Flesh and Nihil, Devourment, Cryptopsy, I would say those bands, especially Dying Fetus, with a very constant rumbling sound and those twisted up death metal riffs that you've come to love from 80s and 90s bands, but turned up the dial and with some more gruesome vocals and gruesome imagery. And I think the theme of this record sort of plays in with that. It's nothing that hasn't really been seen before, but the antisocial and sort of fuck you demeanor of this band really does help bolster the fact that they feel so nasty, that they feel so vile and unwelcoming. A very lively, full, organic musical palette to it instrumentally. It's not doing anything that is going to blow you away, but I think reinventing the wheel is sometimes a bad thing. And as opposed to the growing pile of death metal bands that play in the old style and have a very dingy sound, it's cool to hear a band that has a heavy, nasty, brutal death metal style that feels a lot like the band specifically that came out of the 90s brutal death metal scene. I want to sort of strike a comparison again with Dying Fetus because I think that their newer material feels a lot like what this feels like. It's unwavering, it doesn't deviate from its extremity, and it does have its technical moments, but for the most part, it doesn't muddy the water with a wank fest of riffs flying. The riffs are very catchy and somewhat accessible for it being a death metal record, and I think that's what the line was sort of tied in from the 90s scene, where the bands were very heavy, they were extreme, but there was something alluring about the way that they wrote their riffs, and I think Desinsertion does that as well here. Low guttural vocals that are very consistent and riffs that you would come to expect from this style, but it's the drum work that really just hit me like a ton of bricks consistently across this record. I love the percussion work, specifically on the double bass. It just hits you so hard over and over and over, and especially in some of the musical breakdowns where the vocals will sort of take a back seat for a moment and fade away, and everything else will sort of bust in and become this twisting labyrinth of riffs and drum work. The double bass really does become a focal point that I love to hear. Good double bass in death metal is such a catchy sound and such a roughened, rigid sound that I can't stand when bands just sort of leave that to the side. It can really be utilized well, and this record is a prime example of it being utilized well. This record stays volatile and it stays busy, and I don't want to sell it short in the way of dynamics. Yes, this record is a bit one-dimensional in its approach by a brutal death metal band's standards, but the diversity in vocals when you get some shrieks that feel more like black metal, or when they'll slow it down a little bit, do open up these tracks to have a bit more individuality and not just be so one note and not just play the same formula and pattern over and over and over. I think that the project does a very good job of making sure that the track listing stays interesting, and for a record that definitely does reach a little bit, I think that is a very useful thing, if not a necessity, in maintaining sort of an intriguing sound. As a whole though, I'm really impressed by stumbling upon this, and I suggest this for anyone that likes brutal death metal, and death metal specifically the bands that I mentioned earlier. This is a very good discovery and a very hard-hitting death metal record, and I think a lot of you guys will enjoy this, and I don't want it to slip through the cracks for you. So be sure to check this out. For me personally, I'm going to be giving this album a 7.5 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Have you heard this new Desinsertion record? Our biggest mistake was letting them control us. If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I'd love to discuss this record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy, and I'm signing off saying farewell.